Yeah, hi. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Adam Kahn. I'm an assistant professor in the Communication Studies department. And not only am I one of the QM peer reviewers, I have one of the few courses on campus that have gone through the QM review process, which is something that the QE essentials are derived from QM, but they are not QM. Nor do I think anybody at the university expecting you all to put your course through a QM review, because from inception to actual certification, it was almost a 2-year process from when I first created the course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you on my screen the first offering I ever did of my online course, which is COM422 Media Effects, and show how some of the things on the checklist I had the first time around, but then show you how I went ahead and improve the things that I did not. So this right here is the original version of the course. And let me go to the old news items. At the time when students logged in, this news announcement here was what they saw. So I did give them instructions when they first logged in that to start out, click the content tab and select course introduction, start here. That, while good and better than nothing, was still only literally telling them one step where to go, but not giving a whole lot detailed what to do. So now when students log into the course, this welcome message is much more substantial. So not only do I tell them to go to the course introduction, start here, and actually provide a hyperlink so that it can go directly to it, I list out the specific activities I want them to do when they go there. In addition, here, this did not necessarily tell them how to navigate the course other than go to this first step here. But now when they log in, it provides a, let's see, questions. This is an asynchronous class. Yeah. So I also then provide descriptions of what the different tabs at the top mean. In addition, in this course intro module, hold on 1 second. I have 3 videos. And among them, in the second one, course format and logistics, I do provide a video overview of navigating the pages. That's always helpful, especially for individuals who are teaching classes that freshmen and transfer students are taking and may not be familiar with Beachboard, because many people coming out of high school may not have had a learning management system, or frequently it's Google Classroom. As well as people coming from our local community colleges frequently have used a different learning management system called Canvas. So they may notice similarities between the systems they've used before, but you shouldn't just assume that all students will know how to navigate Beachboard. Now, in terms of then the second of the QE standards, learners are interested to the purpose and structure of the course, that also occurs in these introductory videos. Previously, I only had a single video where I sort of meshed the overview, the introduction to myself, format, logistics in one video, rather than clearly separating them so that students can understand what the purpose of these 3 introductory, actually now 4 introductory videos. The how to do this course and succeed is something that I added more recently. And in it, in the course overview, I tell them about what is this course, what are the topics it's going to cover, and then discuss in this course format and logistics, among other things, I let them know this course is broken into 22 modules over 5 parts. And I give them a sense of here's what you're going to have to do in every module. Here are the activities expected, as well as let them know the general order by which the course runs. Now, in terms of the third QE standard, learning objectives or competencies are stated clearly, are written from the learner's perspective, and prominently located in the course. When I taught this the first time, all I had was on my syllabus the course learning objectives, which we are supposed to have on all our syllabi at the university. And actually, that was even a Word document. It wasn't embedded into the Beachboard HTML. But now, not only do the students have the course learning objectives on the syllabus, in any given content module, it is prominently located at the beginning of the module. What are the learning objectives for the module? So while the course learning objectives should be prominently located on your syllabus, I know some professors who also include it on their Beachboard homepage so that students would see them every time they log in. When you divide things up into modules, you should also clearly state what are the module learning objectives. Most of you have now taken one of the many training courses either through the university and QM to know that a key when designing module learning objectives as well as course learning objectives is that they are measurable. And then number 4, the learning objectives or competencies are suited to the level of the course. Obviously, the course learning objectives are set by the departments themselves with their SCO, but once, for instance, students get deep enough into the course, the learning objectives are, this is a 400 level course, asking them to do things such as being able to explain or analyze their concepts they're learning. For a 400 level course, it wouldn't be appropriate to have at least too many module learning objectives that would be asking them to define concepts or remember concepts, as those are more lower level learning objectives that tend to be more appropriate for lower division courses. Now, initially, so number 5 is the course grading policy is stated clearly at the beginning of the course. And while the originally the earliest version of the course listed the overall grading rubric of how point values were distinguished, that was only for the course overall. And the grading policies are in the syllabus. So the original version would have met that quality essential standard 5. One thing that actually I had to go through multiple iterations to meet the QM standards was this 6. Specific and descriptive criteria are provided for the evaluation of learners' work, and their connection to the course grading policy is clearly explained. So on my syllabus, among other things, and this really, what I'm about to show you, gets at multiple quality essential standards at once. I clearly note in the first paragraph with the format, letting them know, among other things, what are the assessments used in grading. And then in the descriptions of the various assignments overall, I explain how they relate to the purpose of the class and the learning assignments. Now, I personally don't like using point-based rubrics in the sense of, okay, writing this part of the assignment is 5 points, this part is 3 points, etc. I prefer more holistic rubrics, which still constitute a rubric, where you more have different descriptions of what an A paper looks like, a B paper looks like. And now this course has, among other things, discussion boards, quizzes, and a project and exams. So I note the general grading criteria for discussion boards early on in the syllabus, where I say, okay, here's how points are going to be addressed. And while these are general criteria, by saying all posts excellent, all posts at least good, that is not necessarily specific. That is because these are the broad policies. For any given discussion activity, let me just take one up. Let me just choose. In the description of the discussion activity, I specifically say, well, here I talked about points being based on post excellence. I specifically say an excellent post will do the following things. Likewise, for the final project, I do use a general holistic rubric where I describe, okay, here is what an A paper would look like. Here is what a B paper would look like. So you can choose to do a rubric based on specific criteria, but or each criteria has a point value, or a holistic rubric is also acceptable in terms of meeting this standard. Now, one thing in general is this is one course. To emphasize, different courses look different ways. For instance, the way I have this might not be appropriate for, say, the public speaking courses in my department. Might not be appropriate for an art course. Might not be appropriate for a course with lots of coding and programming. So this is just to show one example of how these quality essential standards can be implemented. It's always important to think about your class, and starting with the course learning objectives and then the module learning objectives. In the coming weeks, I'll show you other quality essential standards I've met, but ultimately you need to really start with that course map, because once you have your course learning objectives and your module learning objectives, everything else gets built around those objectives. So discussion activities were good for my class, maybe not for another class. So these are just one way you can do it. But for these basic criteria that are frequently talking about structure, purpose being said, navigatability to be said, the syllabus, introductory posts, introductory videos are likely places you might see these. They might also come in an email. It's just key that you go over them. And somebody by the name of Elise asked about this being an asynchronous class. This is an asynchronous class, but I apply these principles even in my synchronous classes, even in a face-to-face setting. So these quality essential principles, while the demos I'll be showing you all are from an asynchronous class, very much can be applied in the context of hybrid classes, synchronous classes, and even classes when we are back in person and teaching in physical classrooms. So with that, I will turn it back over to Cheryl.
Great, thank you, Adam. Thank you for going over that. So we are getting ready for the next presenter, and it's our in-house specialist on accessible technology. I'd like to bring Marissa Hernandez. She is also our instructional design lead.
Hi, everybody. So let me go ahead and share my screen and start the presentation. And actually, this is a good segue in regards to what your question was, Professor Moore, regarding like web design. So accessibility, or I should say user experience, UX design, really originates from accessibility. So within your QM standards, there's like readability, I think it's 8.4 or 8.5, but those elements of accessibility will help you, like Chad said, where it's in regards to your website, best website design. So just think that user experience, the original, it's for accessibility, right? So that's where it's highly influenced from. So let's see here. Can you guys see my screen? Actually, go ahead.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah, it's working.
Perfect, thank you. So I am going to talk about Quality Essentials Checklist number 23, which goes over accessibility text and images. Let's see here. So QM standard 8.3, it is up, it's worth 3 points. And it defines the standard as the course provides accessible text and images and files, documents, LMS pages, and web pages to meet the needs of diverse learners, right? So what does that actually mean? Well, so text and images in the course are accessible to all learners. And then also the course provides alternatives to all images that there is access to equal information. So accessibility really is providing equal access to all of your students, regardless if there is a disability or not. So unfortunately, I won't have the time to go and show you how to demonstrate how to make things accessible, but I have provided solutions on what you could do to go ahead and make your course accessible. So let me go ahead and go into that. So what can you do as an instructor to make your text images, your text and your images accessible for your course, right? So some ideas are images and graphs that they need to be described. So they need to include an alt text or an actual long description, which is actually used during HTML coding. And here you see a picture of what that looks like. So you do have within the tools like PowerPoint, Word, to use the alt text feature. So again, I won't be able to show you how to do that, but it's very, very easy. And actually technology, since it's so much advanced now and it's smarter, when you insert an image in your slide or in your Word document, it will automatically generate an alt text here, right? So what you're seeing is the interface for PowerPoint. You're seeing that once I select the document, or once you select the image and I go into picture format, it pops up this dialog box, which is alt text. So here in the alt text, you want to really describe what it is, what the image, what meaning, what information is being conveyed to the student or to your learner. So if it is decorative, so for example, you see my PowerPoint, you see these, little squiggly lines up the very top, that's all decorative. That has no meaning and no purpose for my presentation itself, right? It's very much all for aesthetics. So if it is decorative, you do have the opportunity to check that off in the box where it says mark as decorative. But if there is meaning within the image itself, that's where you need to provide the alt text. So for example, I hope you guys can see this, but it says man walking dog next to California State University Long Beach Pyramid. So here's a little man, but that's explaining what the image is, what's happening in the image. Another thing that you could do is tables are not embedded as images. So as you see here from the right, this is a snapshot of the checklist, your guys' checklist, that I've embedded into this PowerPoint. So when a screen reader reads this, it will say image, or it will say blank image, especially if there's not an alt tag assigned to this. And really, it's really difficult to include alt tags for tables, right? Because there's so much information. Let's see if there's questions. So there's so much information in regards to tables. It's not recommended to actually, use an alt tag for a table. I'll show you what an alternative could be. But what you need to do is then go ahead and insert the table. So inserting the table will allow for screen readers to recognize each column, each row, and identify, what content falls under which header, right? What header from the table row. Another thing is to also identify your headings in your tables. So like I mentioned with the screen reader, they read from top to bottom, left to right, right? So that's the assistive technology, the way that screen readers will read. In order for screen readers to identify what the header is, you have to actually mark what the header is. So here, again, here's the interface for PowerPoint where I've inserted a table. And within the table design option, you see this options here, table style options, these have to be checked off so that assistive technologies such as screen readers can identify again what is the row, what's the header row, and then what's the content to follow. So again, people who have sight are able to see what falls in that table, but for someone who's using assistive technology like a screen reader, that information has to be organized for them so that they could get the same equal access of information as other students who have sight. Also, providing captions for tables is very important. So here you see a table that I've created, I've inserted, and I've added a table caption to the very bottom of the table, right? So it's, this table is referring to the make and model of cars. So I've explained that. I've not only have identified the headers within the table itself, but I've also have identified what this table is, so it's make and models of cars. And this is really easy to do. For captions, you could just use I think it's insert text within PDF, or I'm sorry, within PowerPoint or Word, and you could go ahead and add that caption. So also style headings are used in the documents. So styles, if you're not familiar with styles and how they work, it really allows you to organize your content, your document. So here I have an example of a syllabus. What I've done is for the top, the course number, title, so this is a syllabus template. I've identified this section as actually being a heading 1. So like I mentioned, there are a lot of options to choose with styles, and they could range from headings, from bullet lists, from lists, and the aesthetics of the document. But how this is very beneficial and helpful for those who are using a screen reader, because they don't, those who don't have sight are not using a mouse, right? There's no point for scrolling. So they are using shortcut keys to navigate through the document. So if things are labeled correctly or organized correctly, they could go ahead and find headings without having to go through the whole document and have it read. I don't know if anyone's familiar with how assistive technology works or what it sounds like, but it's kind of very robotic, and they, depending on people's skill sets, with that software, they could speed up the process as to the sound of the voice, right, for the screen reader. But in general, headings are great to use because that organizes content, and it allows for those who don't have sight to go ahead and navigate through the document. So most importantly, we see this a lot where there are PDFs that are scanned and are actually uploaded into Beachboard. So you do not want to do that. That's please stay away from that, because not only is it's difficult for those that have sight to see, and here's a great example where things are not readable, right? It's hard to determine what is being said in this article, but most importantly, for someone who doesn't have sight and they use a screen reader, it will recognize this as an image. So again, the access to information is not there. It's an injustice to students because they can't access the content that's on that article. So again, it will recognize it as an image, and it will say either image or blank, right? That's how the screen reader will be read, or how it announces this document. What you can do though, if you do have a PDF and there's no way of, you're not the owner of the PDF, what you can do is actually bring that into Adobe Acrobat. And there's great, accessibility checkers within Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, and even Adobe that allows you to, click a button and it automatically will generate accessibility features for you. So Adobe is one of those tools that I've actually highlighted here. It's called OCR, which is optical character recognition. What that allows is once if you bring your PDF into Adobe Acrobat Pro and you were to go and hit this button, right, the optimize character recognition, it will then break each letter, each word into, so that the accessibility or the assistive technology, the screen reader, could actually read the content on that page. So it's no longer being read as an image, but now it's actually being read as it should be, right? So text color does not convey meaning. We've seen this a lot where, you're designing your course and you want to make your course look aesthetically pleasing. So you'll try to add color. If there's no purpose in what that color is, if it's not conveying meaning, don't use it, because that could be very confusing. Especially for this example, this is really relying on the color red, right? So someone who might be colorblind, if they were to read this, fill out the form below and answer the questions required in red. Well, if they're colorblind, red and green are, those are colors that cannot be seen. You don't really know what red is, so it's difficult. So they'll be completing everything. In this case, what you really want to do is add emphasis or an asterisk to identify, what is that they have to fill out. So again, not relying on color if it doesn't have meaning. Also use consistent fonts, not only for to be able to read the content easily, but so assistive technology can also recognize the fonts. So for example, serif fonts, which is what you're seeing here to the right, the Old English, the Century, New Times Roman. These are very difficult for screen readers to read because sometimes because of the little curls at the end, it's been known to break the screen reader. And they can't read the content or just becomes gibberish. So not only is it, hard on somebody who's using assistive technology, but even if a student who has a cognitive disability, right, and has a cognitive disability that affects their spatial, disability. So that's would be challenging for them to see. Someone who has dyslexia, right, there might be a font that she'll use that's serif font, and it's not really helping them understand or read the content. So we really recommend to stay away from serif fonts and use more of sans serif fonts. So you could tell very clear or very clean, very clean to understand and to read. And those are the recommendations that we have in regards to fonts. And then also just keep consistent throughout your course, right? So that also includes, when you create your HTML in your document, or I'm sorry, your HTML within Beachboard or within your documents itself, activities or workshop or worksheets. So like I mentioned before, Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, and even Adobe, they do have accessibility checkers. So again, here is what it looks like, the interface of Microsoft Word for the accessibility checker. What you would do is you would go into the info, and it might look different if you have a Mac. I'm actually using a PC, but it has the same feature of accessibility checker. And if you check the accessibility, it will then give you the errors. So very similar to those of you, if you're familiar with Blackboard Outline, which I could talk to you about too, about the tool that's coming in for that we will be deploying to the campus for the summer. But it will walk you through how to actually fix that document. So not only will it recognize what the errors are, but it will walk you through how to fix those documents. So again, it's not an additional tool, it's already built within Microsoft Word, and the same for PowerPoint. I'm sorry, this is, so Microsoft Word and PowerPoint look very similar. The one for Adobe, like I shared with the scan documents, this is a little different. What you'd have to do is you have to actually open or activate these tools. So accessibility and Action Word are the two that you would use. To do that, you would have to have Adobe Acrobat Pro. So it can't be the reader, it has to be the actual Pro where you could edit and modify documents. And in the Tools tab, this is where you would select Accessibility or Action Wizard. I would recommend highly to use the Action Wizard because that's where you would have, it does everything for you, it generates. So you literally just click a button and it will walk you through the steps. And that's where it will also go through the OCR, the optical character recognition. So here are some resources. Again, these are resources for how to create accessible PowerPoints and Adobe Acrobat documents, as well as I've included the Diagram Center because we know that we get a lot of questions from STEM faculty as to like, well, how do you include an alt tag for a table or a chart or very complex images? And my answer to that is you'd have to provide your students with an alternative format. So you being the SME of that content, right? If you have a chart or a table, what you could do as an alternative is actually create an Excel spreadsheet with that same information and use that Excel spreadsheet as a link inside your course. So again, you're providing your students with equal access of that information. Although they're not seeing the visual aesthetics to the chart or table, the information is still being translated or given to them. So here are some resources. I've also included resources for STEM, for for equations, we get that question a lot too. It's like, how do you, my team, we work very closely with remediating or working with student assistants in remediating content for math. And it's very complex. It's you can't really do it within Adobe Acrobat Pro. So there are tools out there that you could use that are for free that you could, like Equatio here is one of them. It's a tool that helps you create math equations and then you could convert them digitally. So then you would use Equatio and then put that into Beachboard, and assistive technology would be able to recognize that. So here are some resources. And then I also have included some campus resources. So this is just, the accessibility movement within Cal State Long Beach. And then lastly, let's see here. If this goes over. I did want to share with you guys. Can you guys see this? Did this come over okay? Or do I have to?
Yes, we
Let me
can
see
see
this.
it now.
Okay, thank you. So, Cheryl did mention the checklist or the help guide for you guys while you guys go through this process. I have created this where it is, the three, what I just presented on right now was 8.3. That's the standard, which is again, accessible text and images. But for QM, there are a total of 6 accessible standards, right? So this guide here is actually kind of breaking it down to what each standard. So you have, which is on the checklist. So it's checklist number 21, which ends up being QM standard 8.1. So it's, what this means, what you can do, and then also providing resources. So these are either internal or external resources. So the first 3 that are actually mentioned, so 8.1, 8.2, and then 8.3, those 3 standards are included in your Quality Essentials checklist. But like I mentioned before, within QM, there are a total of 6 accessibility standards. So you also will have, as you continue within your journey of, your course and making it accessible, I've included the other 3, which is 8.4, 8.5, and 8.6, that are not in your QE Essential checklist, but that, you could work towards to making your course accessible. So same format, what does this mean? What can you do? And then resources to help you, achieve accessibility within your course.